Okay, threading a serger. You've got two things that can make this difficult. One is understanding the thread paths. In other words, knowing where these threads need to go. The other part is getting those threads there. The thread paths, a lot of times they're color coded and there'll be a little diagram, sometimes right in the front, sometimes you open the cover and there'll be a diagram. And so if that's all color coded, that'll help quite a bit. A manual sometimes will have a better close up of the thread paths. Sometimes they're confusing, but usually the diagram and the manual, you can figure out where the thread is supposed to go. Getting the threads there, having good tweezers is absolutely critical. I like these ones that have the little bend to the tip and have a little hole with a peg that goes through. You can get a good grasp on the threads. These are about $4 each on Amazon. It also helps to have good lighting, and if you need them, good glasses. I had the optometrist make me glasses that have a focal length that's just right for sewing and threading machines. And some people like these Optivisor magnifying goggles. They can also be helpful. All right, so let's get to it. You're always going to raise the thread stand up. Handle goes down. Some sergers thread with the handle up. I think the FOFs, I don't know. You look at your manual. Definitely a good idea to read the manual. We're going to start with unthreading. There is a method where you could, if you wanted to say change colors, you could tie off. You just tie a knot and put your new, you'd say you'd put the different cone that you wanted to tie off there and then in the new spot, and then you could just bring the thread up and tie a knot. So here, tie like just a little overhand knot. So that can be a fast way to change colors. When I do that, I'm careful not to drag the thread through these tension units because it can break in there. I don't know. It's just better not to haul a knot through there. I just unfloss the thread if I'm doing that. That's tying off. But don't use tying off as a crutch. Learn to thread your serger because eventually it will come unthreaded. And also, if you know how to thread your serger, you'll be able to spot errors in threading. The threads on sergers will twist themselves around thread guides, they'll unthread themselves. If you just rely on tying off, then when something goes wrong and you need to thread it, you won't know how. And then that's going to be a lot more frustrating than just learning how to thread the thing. But once you know how to thread it, tying off is fine. Okay, back to unthreading. We're going to start with unthreading. You saw I cut those off. We have a chain formed right now because this serger was being used. There's a woven chain of threads wrapped around this stitch finger here. The stitch finger is where the stitch is formed. And so sometimes you can just pull that chain right off. If it doesn't come right off, an easy trick is to turn the hand wheel one full cycle toward you. In other words, the needles are going down and back up. That's a cycle. And then one full cycle away from you. That just frees up the thread. It might be hard to see in there, but that chain just popped right off the stitch finger. You never ever want to force this to go because you could bend a looper and then the machine may not chain. So just cut and pull the threads as needed, and just do that. Don't force anything. Take your time. And this chain, because it had come unwoven when I did that maneuver, popped right out. Okay, we're unthreaded. The first thread, normally the best thing to start with is the upper looper. Now each of these tension dials corresponds to a thread, and you can see again on the color coding which thread is which path, goes in which path. But on this one, these are the needle threads. The blue is the upper looper and the green is the lower looper. Now if you're ever not sure, some people label these. I don't personally like to write on my machines or put stickers, but you could on yours. You could also just look. The upper looper's pretty apparent because it comes up above the needle plate, and the lower looper stays low. So you can look at the diagram and look at the machine and it should be readily apparent that green is the lower or left looper, and the blue path is the upper looper. When you're threading for the first time or learning, sometimes it is really nice to have different color threads and to have those thread colors correspond with the color coding if your machine has that. Then you can also see it's a good way to practice setting tension, because then you can see which thread is doing which thing. Okay, so I'm starting with the upper looper, generally a good practice. I'm just following the guides here. Sometimes if I really want to be careful not to miss a guide, I will count as I go or match. Say like, okay, I got this one. Oh, now it's telling me to go this one. Oh, it's telling me to go up here. Now it's telling me to go this guide. So you can really follow it step by step. You can see these ones, the thread just slots right in. It just floss it in. But now on this one, this looper, I'm going to use the, whoops, I didn't get it in there quite right. I'm going to use the tweezers, and I guess that's right. Now the loopers here, they have little eyes, a little hole, like a needle. So it's like threading a needle, even though the loopers don't pierce the fabric, but merely weave the threads back and forth. All right, there's my upper looper, and I want to make sure the thread is underneath the presser foot and back behind. Back behind like that. Some people say you always thread with the presser foot up, because on some machines it releases the tension, and that you want to make sure for sure that the thread is fully flossed into the tension. But as long as you do what I just did here and just floss that thread in there, it's going to be fine. It's in the tension unit, so I don't stress too much about whether that presser foot's up or down. So I was just trying to do this with my hands not in the way. The lower looper is always the most challenging to thread, and every machine's going to be a little different. Some of these, the whole front swings out so you have good access. Others, you're gonna have to, like this one, you're gonna have to feed the thread through there. Some loopers, you have to thread the thread through the entire shaft of the looper. Sometimes you have to go through just a little loop. Sometimes there's a hook. Sometimes there's a lever that will pull the looper forward. They're all a little different, but it's definitely the most challenging. Typically, there's a guide you can't see. There's almost always a guide on the end of the looper toward the back side of it. And on this one, there's just a little hole. I'm just threading this through with the tweezers. Then I'm going to take the tweezers and I'm going to pass that whole thing through until I see that tip. The other thing, when you're threading this lower looper, is you can move this. You're going to have to. I started with the looper all the way left. I turned the hand wheel until it was all the way left so that I could more easily access that little hole on the end. But now I need to access this eye in the tip of the looper. So I moved the hand wheel so that that's in the rightmost position, which makes it easier to get the thread through. Now you might have noticed, I'm switching with the tweezers for my right and left hand. That's what's easiest for me, but you can do that different ways. Okay, now there's always a question with these things about whether the looper threads, which one should be on top. In other words, does this thread go on top of this thread? Does the lower looper go on top of the upper, or vice versa? Some sergers are really picky about that, and if you don't start with the correct looper thread in the correct position, it will not weave a stitch. So what I do is I just make sure these threads are side by side. Neither one is crossed, so it can't foul up. It should work fine.